Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. It is episode 127. This is written by Ron Sproat, directed by Leela Swift. There's a lot to get to here. I will admit that there are some things about Dark Shadows I kind of forget, and this is one of them. And I want to give a shout out to Medea Stanlick. She was on my channel here about a week or so ago, and she had pointed this out. Were they planning to make Josette the reincarnation of Vicky in the original series? This episode lends a little credence to that. It starts off with a rehash of Vicky being freed by Burke and Roger, and them seeing Matthew Morgan's body again. Last time you're going to see it. No ghost in this episode. We're going to get a mention of ghosts though. Uh, we go from the old house to the great house. Elizabeth's on the phone, calling the sheriff and his men, explaining the situation that Burke, Devlin, and her brother went to the old house to get Vicky, that she was being held prisoner by Matthew Morgan this whole time, behind the bookshelf, behind the secret door no one knew about. And she explains this to Mrs. Johnson. Overhears the conversation, and Mrs. Johnson sort of repeats the gloom and doom of what she says before, which is, "Oh, if Vicky's in Matthew's hands, she's pretty much dead for sure," which isn't the case, and we know this. Um, Soon after that conversation ends, Burke, Roger, and Vicky come into the great house, and they get Vicky in the drawing room. Roger and Burke follow behind, and Burke sits by Vicky as they try to get her some. As they get her some, Roger gets some brandy for everybody. Mrs. Johnson is going to go start coffee. Um, and Vicky makes mention that the reason she was saved was because of Josette's ghost. That the ghost of Josette Collins saved her. And what we're going to learn in this episode, in a sense, is that the ghost of Josette seems to protect family members. That Elizabeth had a great aunt that was protected by a woman who appeared in white, and that woman was a white dress, and that was Josette. That ghost was Josette. Now, now, I will say that I love a lot of the conversation in this episode, because especially between Roger and Burke, because you could kind of see where their old friendship was before all the hell that was the Burke going to prison for a crime he didn't commit. In this episode, you can see that uh, when Burke and Roger are talking and they're alone in the drawing room, Burke says, "Didn't it look like he had been frightened to death?" And Roger goes, "I'd rather not think about it." And I do love this conversation because it lets you know that Roger is aware of ghosts. He's just in denial about them. And Burke, he's tired of being in denial. um, the conversations between Burke and Vicky, of Burke telling Victoria Winters up in her room, "I'm glad you're okay. It's the most important thing to me right now." He goes, "Please ignore that." You see this is very common man talk in the 60s television era. "Oh, I'm not going to say I love you, but I am infatuated with you, but please ignore that." That's a trope in the 60s TV, especially in dramas. In Dark Shadows, again, gothic soap opera drama. So you have that. Now, I will say, yes, they're going to develop. I don't want to jump ahead, but I do want to mention this here. They are going to develop an actual relationship of boyfriend, girlfriend, because they're going to get engaged way later on. But there's a trope that goes on in the 90s that kind of repeats some of this without the actual boyfriend girlfriend relationship, where because Burke tells Vicky, "Look, I'm around. If you need me, I'll be there. Call me." Basically, I'm not going anywhere. If you want to, because Vicky tells him, look, I'm going to stay. The Collins family are as much of a family to me as I've ever had. They're the closest thing I've had to a family. And basically, Elizabeth reasserts this when she has a conversation with Burke earlier in the drawing room saying, don't hurt the girls. You want to hurt me? Fine. Don't hurt the girls. Don't drag the girls into this. And she basically puts her foot down here. And not a mean way, and just in a direct way. Hey, look, if you want to have a relationship with her, that's fine, but don't do it to hurt her. Which I like. That is very Elizabeth Collins Stoddard moment here. And you get this close up of Vicky with her eyes closed in her bed. I've mentioned before how Alexandra looks like Joan at times. This is that time. When she's got her eyes closed, she looks like younger Joan Bennett here in this episode. And there's moments you can see a resemblance between Vicky and Elizabeth. I mean, dark hair, dark eyes, the facial features, it's there. So this is why a lot of fans, other than the behind the scenes stuff that I mentioned before, um, feel that Vicky is related to Elizabeth, that is her mother, that Elizabeth and Vicky are mother and daughter, that Carolyn and Vicky are sisters. For those who don't know, I've mentioned this behind the scenes before. I'll repeat it here that Joan Bennett had come down to the studio to see how casting was going, and Alexandra was auditioning for the role of Victoria Winters. And when Joan saw her, she thought she was one of her daughters. She said, "Is this a joke? Is that one of my daughters?" you know, but no, it wasn't. But that's how much Alexandra looked like Joan. Hey, man, what can I tell you? You also get Bert telling Vicky in her bedroom, "Get away from this house. Things, ha- things happen in this house that are unexplainable." This is Dark Shadows. You know, they were teasing ghosts. They've been teasing ghosts since the beginning. They've been teasing this supernatural thing since the beginning. They are now fully into it. By 127, they are full tilt. We're into the supernatural. By season 4, I'm not saying they haven't been, but this is their by season 4, episode 20. We're all the way in. We're all the way in. We've been teasing ghosts, we've been mentioning, we've been showing them occasionally here or there. We've been pepper spraying and basically adding a little pepper here, there. Well, now, now we're not only going to show them, we're going to mention them. There is things coming up. I will say that you gotta pay attention to here coming up, and that is notice how the ghost dealt with Matthew Morgan in the previous episode, but Josette herself doesn't deal with the Phoenix personally. She recruits Vicky. She's basically using the human beings around her to help her fight this battle, and that's sort of something I will say Dark Shadows does really interesting. The ghost, the supernatural, will use humans to fight their battles. And no, this will not be a one and only time in Dark Shadows coming up here. So it's going to get really, 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 really interesting. So trying to think if there's anything I missed in this episode. Oh, I gave a shout out to Medea Stanlick, and she had said about Vicky says she looks like Josette. Yes, in this episode, this is the episode where Victoria Winters tells Joan Bennett's character Elizabeth, she looks like me. That I look like Josette Collins. There's a resemblance, and I don't think this is a throwaway line. I don't think this is a line that Vicky was being hysterical. No, but I will say this is a Dark Shadows writer's trope. They often started Vicky down roads that they never fully finished or fully embraced. And I'll get into that when I get into these other episodes because it gives more of an explanation of what I mean by the supernatural use humans to fight their battles. They're somewhat recruiting them. Vicky has kind of been antagonistic at times during the beginning. She's going to be a little more antagonistic towards Laura Collins at times. You're going to see that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Link to the episode will be in the description box. Really, really good. And yeah, you do get Josette dancing around the old house at the end here. Again, great job, Beverly. Lewis Edmonds, Mitchell Ryan, Joan Bennett, Alexander Mulkey, Clarice Blackburn appearing in this episode. No Carolyn in this episode, but Carolyn gets mentioned. This Carolyn hasn't been in a couple episodes lately, but she'll be back. So I hope you guys have a good day. Take care.